Welcome, everyone. It's an interesting ritual, isn't it? The arrival. It's something very unique, I think, to our time in the world where we're using Zoom, as we have this time where we just sit and look and see who comes, and people take their seat and get their tea or whatever. Anyway, it's not just a time of waiting to begin. It's actually we've begun. The ritual begins with us greeting each other silently. A little smile here and a wave there, a bow. I was thinking, Trudy's here, and that we were talking just a little bit before, and I thought about, in a bygone era where you would arrive on a horse or maybe in a carriage, and someone would be standing on the steps, and then he would arrive. It's a little different than you greet them. So it's nice to greet each other in silence in this way. So let's sit in silence for a bit as we enjoy the spaciousness which is always holding us, that we come into a more intimate relationship with in our sitting and breathing. So we meet in this silent way and begin to settle, or at least take our um, posture of zazen, even if we don't feel quite settled. In a way, we're surrendering ourselves to the meeting, the arrival. Whether we have our camera on or off, it doesn't really matter. You're offering yourself, you're surrendering yourself to the meeting of the arrival and the others. Here you are. Here we are. With nothing to do and nothing special to become, just to meet. Of course, there's the analog to sitting facing a wall in the Zendo, sitting with ourselves, as ourselves, next to our friends. But in this case, the wall has faces, familiar, so many of them. We offer ourselves to that wall, to those faces, and they in turn offer themselves to this wall in which they find us. Without words and without activity. And it's a remarkable thing to quietly and very peacefully celebrate our lives in that meeting, in stillness, not getting busy, becoming someone, but surrendering ourselves to the moment. as we're sitting in this silent welcome and silent arrival, there are times when I'm sure you might become distracted or caught up in thinking, sleepy, bored, all the things that we all feel at various times. But if you're curious, whether your camera is on or not, you can see and you can open your eyes, or even with your eyes closed, and just remember that you're offering yourself. It's a different bit of arrival than seeking something, but offering something. Surrendering to the arrival as an offering. And with our arrival and our offering ourselves in this way, let the words of the verse of the robe have meaning with that orientation when we chant, vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. More arrivals. Wonderful. I like seeing the silent mouthing all around. It's so nice. As some of you undoubtedly know, when I was on this last excursion on the mainland, I went to Austin and visited, did the memorial service, and went to visit my mom and Kathy in North Texas, and then went to Cape Cod. In that interim time, like almost everybody that I've talked to who's traveling lately, I got COVID. And so I was suddenly um, having to deal with that, and in isolation at the Hyatt Regency at DFW Airport. Um, and I fortunately had visited what for me is a really important icon in Austin, which is Book People. You know, an actual big multi-story bookstore you can go into and pick up books. oh my God, heaven, to me. And I bought a few, some of uh, at least one of which were recommended by some folks here. And so I was reading in isolation, an unexpected retreat, where I felt vulnerable because I was a bit weak. I wasn't terribly ill, but and uncertain about how things would go because everything had been disrupted. And it's one of those, I'm sure you've had them, those turning moments when we have something that's completely unexpected, in this case, unpleasant, but it's an opportunity to follow the vulnerability into some like new territory, not necessarily the territory you would choose, but nonetheless, there you are. And usually our defenses are down if you're ill and you're vulnerable, and at least, kind of in abeyance for a while. Um, and mostly, I know for me, it was just because I didn't have the energy to keep up the usual constructions of the self. And a lot of the manager parts of me and protectors sort of just lay down on the job. And so the tender exile parts of me are closer to the surface. And I found myself in a more tender place, kind of a shaky presence, not depressed and not feeling bad, just tenderized in that way. And things look really different from this place, and things can come in or through differently. I know you're aware of this, but this is not unusual. And so I read a couple of books during this sudden reversal, this kind of full stop, this sharp turn. And one was fiction, one was nonfiction. We say fiction and nonfiction, but beyond those designations, I've really come to appreciate the ways in which all language really takes the shape of the life in which it lives. Um, that language finds its shape in there. Um, I was looking to see if Genevieve was shaking her head because she's so much about these things. And also the ways in which life shapes the language so it can be used and shared. So there's this, um, we use poetry all the time in our teaching, um, because it's language that goes beyond ordinary kind of discourse and thinking, and we call on voices from the past to help guide us in the Dharma. But another question that I was asking myself is like, there was a fiction book and a nonfiction, so which one was true? We say fiction and nonfiction, but they both point to the truth if they're good. And like all deep spiritual literature, I can remember years ago reading Marcus Borg's book. He's a wonderful Christian theologian. He's passed away now. And he wrote a book called simply How to Read the Bible. And based on my past, I thought it would be worthwhile reading it. And I did. And I don't remember hardly anything in it other than it was useful. This line, he said, for things to be profoundly true, they don't have to be literally true. They can be profoundly true, even if they're not literally true. And as teachers, we use the old sutras, koans. We draw from other teachers' teachings, the commentaries on the Dharma, all this Buddhist literature to support and encourage teachings. We do this in inquiry all the time, Dharma talks. And we read the words and we share words like from the Buddha's teachings, from Dogen, from Suzuki Roshi. We'll draw from a talk from Joko Beck or Blanche or each other. It happens all the time because we're searching for words that I'm kind of telling you what I do here. I'm always searching for words that resonate and call forward the innate freedom that we're actually situated in all the time. Words that will kind of wake up or illuminate the barriers or distortions along the path so we can walk together a little more easily. That's what inquiry is about. So I'm always trying to extend the kinds of literature we use as teaching sources. Like, why would a contemporary novel be less relevant than a sutra? They're just in different times. But they're just human words, you know. In the traditional literature, all those classic teachings of the Buddhist thought and of Zen practice um, are necessary, I think, but contemporary literature echoes and amplifies those classical teachings. And here's why, I think, for me anyway, because in the contemporary poetry and literature, we can hear ourselves and we can see ourselves in the stories and the reflections. These things come to life beautifully. Um, so I'll tell you what the two books were, by the way. Um, and I'll say just a sentence on each one so you know. I'm going to talk about one of them today and one of them next week, actually. So stay tuned. And some of you have heard some of this, but um, the first one I'm going to talk about is the novel. It's called Beautyland. The author is Marie-Helen, hyphenated, Bertino, Bertino, and I'll give these to Cassie so she can put them in Shalom. So Beautyland is a novel about these are like the publisher's words, a novel about the fragility and resilience of life on our earth and in our universe. Already that sounds interesting, right? It's like, okay, this is the Dharma. The author evokes the very human feeling of being in exile while at home by introducing us to a gentle, unforgettable alien for our times. And I'll tell you more about this in just a little bit and about the title. The other book, just so you have both of them, is called Lost and Found. And the subtitle of this book, Reflections on Grief, Gratitude, and Happiness. Sounds like a Dharma book, right? It's part memoir, part guidebook to sustaining wonder and gratitude in the face of loss and grief. And I'll say more about that as well, too. Both of them are beautifully written by authors who are amazing. So those are the books anyway. But back to the context of our Dharma teaching. So here's, I had to write this out for myself. So here's a summary of what I think all of the Dharma teachings are about. It changes, I say it differently, but today this is what it looks like to me, okay? There are four things basically. Number one, and they're kind of like the Four Noble Truths and said in a different way. Suffering and dissatisfaction are woven into the fabric of life. First Noble Truth, right? So suffering and dissatisfaction are woven into the fabric of life. But my second one was freedom and beauty are equally woven into the same fabric of life. Suffering and dissatisfaction are part of the weave, but so are freedom and beauty. Number three, the liberating realizations of the Buddha. Grounded in these first two perspectives, what he realized is that everything changes and everything is interdependent. These are the basic ones we teach. Impermanence and mutual causality. And they help us understand this weaving and the fabric of our lives, both the suffering side and the freedom side. And then number four, all of this, which is kind of conceptual that I'm saying, is being lived out every single moment already, whether you notice it or not. The reality of life is just this everyday living. And when we surrender or relinquish, as I was asking you earlier in the meditation, our small individual self-referenced perspectives, we're better able to offer our care in the world. So here are the four things again. Suffering and dissatisfaction are woven into the fabric of our lives. Freedom and beauty are equally woven into the fabric of our life. The things the Buddha realized about impermanence and interdependence tell us a lot about how that weaving happens and what our life is about. And number four, all these ideas are just ideas. All this is what's being lived out all the time anyway. And when we practice, we wake up to it. And when we wake up to a larger perspective instead of just our smaller perspective, we can offer ourselves in the world a little more. Does that make sense? That's sort of like your Dharma 101 for today, the small version. So the question, how is all of this Dharma, all of it flowing through the life of a fictional alien offered to us by a contemporary living author? So I'm going to give you a few examples of ways in which I think um, the language of this particular author in this particular story matches the shape of my life. And while I was ill, how it resonated during my retreat, how close it was to my own body and my own heart. When I was resting in that enforced practice container, and how it's now shaping the language I'm using today so it can serve and be shared in a wholesome way, the things I talked about earlier. So this is more than just a Dharma book report. It's kind of like that, but it's more than that. It's my language and conversation with the author in the service of the Dharma. And I hope it calls something forward in you in that way, so we can speak about it. It's what I wanted to share with you anyway. And another thing, I keep thinking of things to say. Uh, Josh looks at me funny. He knows what this is like. I'm not trying to teach Buddhism or Zen. There are a lot of venues for that, very good ones. And we have classes and we have many things, depth and practice, and where we teach Buddhism and Zen. That's not what I'm trying to do. In inquiry, my job is to show you the Dharma and invite you to meet your ancestors and each other, not to teach you Buddhism. And to do all this in the context of our everyday lives. Because if you can't find it here, it's not alive. So back to the book here for a minute, Beautyland. There's a whole thing in Buddhism about the Pure Land Buddhism. It's a concept that you pray to the celestial realm of Buddhism, Bodhisattvas, to be reborn in this special place. It's very Christian in a certain way. I'm making it a little too simplistic. In the novel, Beautyland is the name of a store. Like I know in Texas you have Sally Beauty, where you buy stuff for your hair products and nail polish and things like that. And in the story, the little girl's mother would buy her perfume in Beautyland, and it was a kind of a cheap store that was close to where they lived. But of course, that refers to something else. Beautyland, this life is beautiful. And I'm gonna read a little bit of what the publisher wrote, because once again, this is the Dharma starting. They say this is a wise, tender novel about a woman who doesn't feel at home on Earth. Anybody else not feel at home on Earth? No, and Nancy, we're already into it as soon as you start. And in the context, just so you know, it's a moment when Voyager 1 was sent out into space, and this baby is born near Philadelphia, a single woman, and it said the baby is tiny and jaundiced and reaching for the warmth and the light, and this, well, aren't we all reaching for this warmth and light? And she recognizes she's different because she has this knowledge that she's from a faraway planet. And her mother's very strange, kind of a quirky woman. And she finds this fax machine by the curb that a neighbor has put out. And she gets this old fax machine. She plugs it into the little girl's room just because she didn't want to throw it away. And the little girl uses it to communicate with her people on another planet. So it isn't about all this space stuff. That's just the background, because these people on the other planet are losing their home and they're looking for a place to live. So this is from the publisher just for a second. For years, she moves through the world and makes a life for herself among humans. And she gives information about what goes on. Here's what I really want to share. I'm going to share three pieces with you, three pieces of Dharma. And I'm going to read this brief paragraph, and then I'm going to go back and make some comments on it. So just listen to it first. This is a transmission that Adina, the little girl, is making to the other planet. And the first line I can hardly get past. She writes, "A body is a hard thing to have." That's enough right there, right? A body is a hard thing to have. She says, "I was sent here to report on the human experience and have failed. I haven't used my life enough." Even the word itself, human, means flawed. It means everything is technically correct, but some unanticipated trouble has fouled it up. If the assignment had been to be human, to fail, then I succeeded. But if it was to create a comprehensive document of life on Earth, I was always doomed. Language is pitiable when weighed against experience. My deepest loves and sadnesses fell outside the realm of articulation and never reached the fax machine. There was always an unattainable aspect to my work, which they must have known. Otherwise, they would have sent someone less sensitive. There's no way of succeeding or failing that the word human does not allow. By far, my favorite human emotion is joy, because it is so misunderstood, because it contains all the others. So beside it being beautiful writing, a body is a hard thing to have. That's the beginning of the Buddha's teachings. Constructed reality, suffering comes along with it. She was sent here, she said, to report on the human experience. And she said she had failed because she hadn't used her life enough. How many of you have that sense at times? Like, am I using my life? And there's always a limit, especially as I get older, I realize, there's certain things I'm not going to do. Um, and there are ways I see the flaws. And if I cannot make those into problems or things I lack, but just the vulnerability. I love it when she says, it means everything is technically correct, but some anticipated trouble has fouled it up. We're amazing. We're the miracles, but we're messy. And then the line that's sort of the mic dropping line, language is pitiable when weighed against experience. We do our best and it's required, but deepest loves, could you say your deepest loves and sadnesses fell outside the realm of articulation? Yeah. So, I want you to feel sorry for me because I'm having to articulate. And it's always what I'm trying to say is way further than what I can say. And then she says that thing about, they should have sent someone less sensitive. I know many of you feel quite sensitive, as if this world isn't quite for you, but it is. And then her final, my favorite human emotion is joy. And it's misunderstood because it contains all the others. And I say often, Buddhism is spoken of as the, cessation of suffering, but I say it's the restoration of joy. And so I heard it echoed here. A little bit later in the book, she writes this, an interesting reflection of humans. She says, humans, when they are in pain, human beings sing Amazing Grace. It has transcended religious, cultural, and racial context and is about the basis of human cultures, which is suffering. The more we live, the more we lose, the more we believe we are lost. The song says, if you remain elegant you will be found. It may take a while. You may have to chill in misery for longer than you feel is necessary. Hang in there and you will receive grace. Grace is unmerited kindness. Unmerited because you are a wretch, which is synonymous with human, which is a synonym for flawed. Grace is a place to store loss. When they are in pain, humans sing amazing grace. You remember that moment in that memorial service, unexpectedly, where Barack Obama just started singing a cappella? Amazing grace, because it transcends all these things. And then that beautiful line, the more we live, the more we lose, the more we believe we are lost. But the believe we are lost part, I think, is in some ways, if you don't have a practice and you don't have relationships within which you're practicing. And then the sentence, the mic drop on this one, the one I can't get out of my head, if you remain elegant, you will be found. What does that mean? If you remain elegant? And what I hear in it is if you practice deeply followed precepts, it doesn't mean be good, purified. It doesn't mean that. Elegant is like show up here in the beginning and be yourself, surrender yourself to yourself, be yourself. That's the most elegant thing you could possibly be, is fully yourself. If you remain, doesn't say achieve. If you remain elegant, you'll be found. It may take a while. It's like practice, isn't it? And you may have to chill in misery for longer than you feel is necessary. Amen. Hang in there and you will receive grace. A place to store loss. We become a larger container for life. And then the last little dharmic piece from it, and this is actually the author reflecting on Adina, the young woman. She said, to reach the end of your life and wish you had time for a few other roads, what could be more human? One lifespan is too short to try to love everything she wants to try to love everything she loves as many times as she can. But to love a mother who grew alongside her, to love a friend who, when she left this earth, to love a dog, to love vocation, to love humans, even though she didn't know. Those loves were transcendent. They changed her. Like so many things, it was the good news and the bad news. One lifespan is too short to love everything you want to love and to love everything as much as you want. It's kind of hard to even read that. And of course, when I was ill reading it and felt vulnerable. But those loves, our loves, these loves here with us are transcendent and they change us. And that's the reason for us doing it. So those are the Dharma reflections from a contemporary voice and someone who's not real, an alien, feels more like home. So what does this call forward in you and your own edges, your own longings, your own stumblings that the Dharma might help you with? If you were in retreat and you got tapped on the shoulder and came in to see me, what would you talk about? Genev is ready.
I figured I would go now since I'm already crying.
Yeah, me too. So,
God, there's so much. I want to just ask this question before I forget it. Is Is that love transcendent even if you are ultimately rejected or betrayed?
It's what you do with the betrayal and rejection, what you do with your love. Those things happen, of course. Mhm. And so that doesn't feel like love.
I just wondered. But I have to say, when I was a child, I felt so not of here that I had an entire creation story that
Mhm.
I was from Jupiter and a
Yeah.
metallic flower opened and sent the metallic seeds out that fell into my mother's scrambled eggs in Jamaica on a cast iron balcony with crows on it. And
I like
that's how,
that.
and I used to report out loud back to Jupiter. That was my job here, was exactly that.
Yeah, here you go.
And I was tiny, but that was my mission, was to understand these strange beings that
Right.
surrounded me. Um, and then there's that line in there, she could have said, my favorite human emotion is joy because it contains them all. But that's not what she says. She says, my favorite human emotion is joy because it's so misunderstood. And I love that so much. I don't know how intentional she was with that word, because she goes immediately on to say it contains all the others. But it actually is such a part of the story of being misunderstood, being the alien who's misunderstood, or misunderstanding, the beings you're meant to understand, the inability to communicate. Um,
Mhm. And why I brought in grace, because it has a way of holding all of this stuff, like the rejection and the non-love. Mhm. Yeah, take a breath. Quite strong, isn't it?
I have so much pain in my heart, and it's like an anvil. When it when I feel it, it's agony. I can't even move.
Mhm.
Cannot even be vulnerable enough to sense anything.
That's what I was just thinking. The practice edge in those moments is the challenge of receiving love that is around you, the faces in front of you, the people that are around you. There's so much in conflict with what you carry with you or what you experienced in the past. It's hard.
Well, and I don't ever see a human being in person, hardly ever, because I'm so tired and I live alone and I work at home. I don't have connection, and I
Cat
get
is
lost.
good, but not quite there.
Right?
The cat is nice, but not the same. Not quite the same.
Right.
But you come here and we talk and you connect and you feel, and that's important.
I just feel, you spoke about living enough. I feel so much shame for the time I spend in bed just holding my heart.
Hmm. Yes, I understand the feeling. But as you look and you see me looking at you and hear my voice, and you don't, I hope you don't experience shame coming back to you. Maybe it's a little bit of an antidote. It's like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, Cassie's reaching out there. Mhm. And many, many other people are too. Thanks for bringing yourself so fully. This is, um, of course, there's trouble and pain and all this. And she said, sometimes you have to chill in misery longer than you want to. But this is elegance, actually, because it's true. It's honest. It's raw. It's human. It's embodied.
Thank you.
It's a gift. Welcome. You're welcome to this way. You're totally welcomed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take us with you.
We have,
Dennis was next.
yes.
In the background of a TV show last night in Ireland, I saw Fagin's Pub.
Yeah. Uh,
I'm sorry, I didn't want to distract you. I just want to say that.
yeah, there are several. My cousins, whenever we go to Ireland, they always want to go to where the Fagans were, and I'm like, oh no, I'm interested in the rest of Ireland. Alcoholic Fagans, not so much.
What's in
um,
your heart today?
yeah. Janine, my heart goes out to you. Thank you for your beautiful honesty today. And Flint, I love this book. I'm going to try to get it immediately. And I just,
Quite
I just,
unusual, but
yeah, I've always loved science fiction, and both my sons do too. We just love science fiction novels, and this one sounds so good. And I just
and most
that
of it
line
is
about,
everyday. Most of it's everyday life in suburban Philadelphia. Really.
yeah, what could be more real. And that line about one lifetime is too short to love everything we want to love. That's just
And to love it as much as we want to love it.
yeah. Can't, that's really good. There was a corny movie, but it was great. I don't know when, in the 80s or 90s, was a Star Trek movie, not a show. And it was, they found this being that they were trying to communicate with, and eventually Spock does a mind meld, which is so great. And its name is V'ger. And it turns out to be the Voyager, Voyager 1, but hundreds of years later. And it's this fantastic metaphor to build a script around. It's just wonderful. And of course, your book is reminded me of it immediately. And it's about what you teach us, about greeting things with curiosity. I think it's just that's all that Voyager did. It just went out and said, "Who are you? What are you?" And I just it gathered so much that it became this being. It became this amazing intelligence.
Curiosity that's non-prejudiced. Just
That's right. No judgment, just curiosity.
yep, that's our practice.
Yeah. I recommend. I suppose it's somewhere out there, but
That's right.
thank you. It's great to see you. I love you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have Claudine.
Hi,
Yeah,
buddy.
I, when you describe, it's not about the book, it's when you described how you felt with COVID and in your vulnerability. And suddenly, when you described the exiles coming towards the surface, I felt, I felt so much met and
Mm-hmm.
it came to me. And it's not often that it happens in such a group.
Yeah,
And because I think usually I have a defense
sure.
there, but I, I felt melt as if these parts were understood for the first time. And I, I've, I've lived almost all my life feeling I was not quite like all the other people, that I was not really from this society and not really okay anyway. And I don't know why it was so strong and what happened, but it's still there.
Yeah, that's one of those moments of grace. It comes
Yeah.
on its own. I'm so glad. And I want to say to everyone who's listening, yesterday was Claudine's birthday.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Please send your. It's a good first day of this next year to feel met this way. A good way
Yeah,
to.
yeah. And you know, I felt met already a few years ago in a different circumstances, and it's so different now. I felt that these parts were welcomed, and nothing could stop them to come. Thank you very much, and thank you for all of you being here. And I wish I
Right.
could say all your names one after the other, just to say thank you.
Merci encore.
We have Judith.
Yeah.
Hi, Judith.
I just want to add to the chorus of gratitude
Ah.
for Shanice's bravery, for her being brave enough to share that with all of us. And I was touched by it. And another thing that has risen during the discussion was having felt my entire life that I was an outsider. I remember in high school, I sought out a book entitled The Outsider, thinking that I would identify with that. And I'm happy to report that here today, I do not feel that I am an outsider, something else that I'm very grateful for.
Yes, well, it's certainly one of the things that brings us together is to find our people in this way, even though it's hard to explain. Hard to see. Yeah. It's good to see you and to see your smile and your butterflies. Thank you.
We have Brooklyn.
Good morning.
Morning. Up the road.
Yeah.
I too was touched by Claudine and remember being 13 years old and sitting on the edge of my bed in the evening and looking through the window into the black sky and saying, "Dear God, you've sent me to the wrong planet.
Mm-hmm.
Please redirect me to where I belong."
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to say to Claudine, you're not alone. And if you ever want to talk,
Mm-hmm.
we'll put my phone number in the whatever. And
I'm
not
guessing,
so much, go ahead.
I'm guessing you're also referencing Genève, who started in the beginning.
That's what I meant, Genève.
Oh, yeah. And Claudine was Switzerland.
Yes, I said the wrong name. Genève.
That's okay. Beautiful French names, both.
Yes, both. Yes, her vulnerability I resonated with it. And just I'm here for you. That's all I wanted to say.
It's wonderful and important and necessary for all of us.
Yeah. Thank you.
At the sort of tail end of my COVID experience, when I was still on the Cape, I had a strange moment of an arrhythmia that was just happened for a while, and then it happened again when I got back here. So I'm being taken care of, but um, a person I'm close to who's here now was asking about it, and I said, I think I know that there's whatever medical thing is going on post-COVID with this arrhythmia, but I feel like my heart is broken, for a number of reasons, but so it's part of why I'm speaking this, because it's important. And before we have just a moment, but I see Becky has her hand up, so I want to be able to speak to her. Thank you, Bronwyn. Love you. There you are.
I just want to thank Appamada for offering me a context to embrace my humanity. Because, yes, I mean, off and on for my entire life, I've been pretty certain that it was all a mistake that I was here. And many things proved that. And so it's really been interesting and wonderful. And it's only because other people share their experience. Not that it's the same as mine, but there are aspects of our humanity that we do have in common. And I just really appreciate each thing, even if it's like somebody's talking about something that I've never experienced, that is common for a lot of other people, helps me know how to interact with other people. But it also often offers me some areas of humanity that I haven't explored. And that's just wonderful.
Yeah, even if the content or the context is different, what is touched is the same.
Yeah.
And so together, we use our voices to remind ourselves of that when we chant, caught in a self-centered dream.
Dream. Only suffering.
Holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. Caught in the self-centered dream, only suffering, holding to self-centered thoughts, exactly the dream. Each moment, life as it is, the only teacher, being just this moment, compassion's way. And I want to thank Trudy for stepping in today to help us out, kind of at the last minute, and I always appreciate her support and care.
Thank you, Flint. Thank you for a beautiful talk, and very happy to be part of the thing that makes it work. Appamada's programs and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support makes a huge difference, and there's a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. And thank you all so much for everything that you've offered by being here. So tonight, Josh and I are going to be in the porch, so if anyone wants to stay on and meet with us, I think we'd be delighted. So if you come into the porch and put yourself on gallery, and thank you again, Flint.